HBAR going to the price of $3, hypothetically speaking, during this bull run is still my price target, even though that's not financial advice. And let me explain why. It's because when it comes to Hedera, we all know that it's very fantastic. However, oftentimes people ignore its fantastic use cases. Now, we all know that Hedera has use cases for AI, decentralized logs. People take a look at its aspects for NFTs, DeFi, but oftentimes there is something that people often ignore. And I think this could be a big narrative moving forward. And what is that? That is its use case for decentralized identity. Now, you may be thinking, okay, decentralized identity, who cares about this type of nonsense? There's actually pretty big potential here, in my opinion. And it's not like there's a bunch of projects out there focused on this. Hedera is one of the famous ones that are, but people often don't really mention this. And let me explain just how massive this market could be. For instance, according to Grandview Research, the decentralized identity market is expected to be worth over $100 billion by 2030. So it's not the biggest market out there, but considering how there really isn't that many dynamic players in this space as of right now, I think Hedera could very well have this monopoly, quote unquote, in terms of this market, because let's face it, it's very well established. After all, Hedera Hashgraph is a directed acyclic graph, and having a big control, let's say, over a market that is hypothetically expected to be worth over $100 billion by 2030, that's not bad. And I think this could be, again, something that could very well allow HBAR to reach great heights during this bull run, because after all, people care about anticipated adoption as opposed to adoption in its current form. And this right here could be massive. Now, let me explain why decentralized identity is key, and especially moving forward. Because, for instance, if we take a look at decentralized identity at its core, quite simply put, we'll take a look at this from a first-person format, right? It's being able to, let's say, control my digital identity without relying on a central authority. Now, you may be thinking, okay, why would this be a good idea? It's because centralized authorities sometimes, even though we see reliable ones out there, even though we see some secure ones out there, sometimes they are susceptible to potential attacks or maybe breaches. We don't know, right? And again, usually a centralized authority, typically they have these multiple single points of failures, and they're very reputable. In some cases, they have a lot of people trying to target them. So that is why I think having decentralization is such a big aspect here. Because, for instance, an example of decentralized identity is like, let's say, being able to identify someone's identity without needing to carry physical identification documents, or should I say ID documents. Now, this is amazing, right? Because, of course, we don't just want to bring around physical documents everywhere. It's a little bit cumbersome, a little bit annoying. And then let's say if it gets lost or something like that, then it's a complete caca situation. So, of course, digital identity does matter. In the grand scheme of things, if we consider how, quite essentially, there is a way to decentralize this aspect of digital identity, this could be a total game changer. Because, again, not having to rely on central authorities, that right there could be such a massive game changer moving forward. Because not only do some people not want centralized authorities to know their information, but then on the flip side, if let's say they do trust them and the data is on there, let's say, it could potentially, hypothetically, get attacked. We don't know, or let's say get hacked or whatever like that. So that is why this right here could be such a revolutionary move when it comes to Hedera moving forward. Because if you take a look at it, some other projects out there that maybe focus on this, they may be using traditional blockchain technology. That's great and all. But if you take a look at Hedera Hashgraph, a directed acyclic graph, this is just typically considered by many people just a lot better in terms of an option. Because if you take a look at a blockchain, typically it can have scalability issues in some cases, like we see with Ethereum. Sometimes it can have some unreliability nonsense. You take a look at Solana, allegedly 8 different network outages in just a time span of a year. And if you take a look at, for instance, something like Hedera Hashgraph, very reliable, very secure, very fantastic overall, not to mention improved data storage, and also energy consumption is very minimal. If you take a look at, for instance, Hedera, I'm going to show this right here. This right here I think is going to surprise a lot of people, because I think they'll be like, wow. Because, for instance, right, we'll see that Hedera per transaction on average consumes less energy than Cardano, Polkadot, Ethereum, Tezos, Algorand, Flow, Visa. And yes, I'm talking about Visa, like, the competitor for MasterCard, not to mention Avalanche, Toncoin, Tron, Near, and even Solana, not to mention even the BNB chain as well. This is insane right here. Keep in mind, per transaction on average, if we take a look at something like Ethereum, it uses around 3,300 times more energy than Hedera. I mean, could you imagine that? That's crazy to think about right there. This is how energy efficient Hedera is. And this right here is going to matter when it comes to enterprise adoption, because let's face it, when we take a look at enterprises, what do they care about nowadays? Many of them, they care about going green. They care about sustainability. And when it comes to Hedera, this could be such a unique selling point, because not only can they approach the angle and say, hey, we're a directed acyclic graph, which is arguably a lot better than traditional blockchain technology, but not to mention as well, we are very energy efficient. Now, again, this is going to matter, because if an enterprise cares about going green, if they care about the environment, this type of stuff is really going to matter again. And when you take a look at Hedera, not only is it suiting the needs of many enterprises, in terms of what they're looking for nowadays, but also in terms of pure fundamentals, because it's not like this Kaka project that's environmentally friendly. No, that's not the case whatsoever. Other projects out there, they say they're environmentally friendly, but then the fundamentals are not great. But when it comes to Hedera, its fundamentals are great. And then you add on top of that the sustainability aspect of it. This is a game set match right here. But it's going to take some time, of course. The adoption really isn't that fantastic when it comes to Hedera in terms of the retail market, I would say. In terms of enterprise adoption, in terms of what it's associated with, I think it's pretty good. It could be better though. Of course, a lot better, right? But then at the same time, it hasn't really gained that retail hype, in a sense that we don't really see many of these developers that are focused on the retail market gravitate towards Hedera. We haven't seen that yet. But it's just a matter of time, because when it comes to a directed acyclic graph, this right here, again, is a total game changer. And I think that in the future, when it comes to AI projects, let's say decentralized identity projects, anything focused on fantastic markets, I don't see why they wouldn't choose Hedera. It's fundamentally fantastic, it's rock solid, and it's just much better than the majority of the competition. There are layer 1 blockchains out there, but then there's a directed acyclic graph, which is on a league of its own. It's like Michael Jordan back in the day. There's NBA players and there's Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? So that's the way to take a look at Hedera Hash Graph. It's like the Michael Jordan of projects. So when I take a look at something like this, HBAR at the price of $3, I really don't see why not. Keep in mind, if it were to go to that price, considering current circulating supply, market cap would be around $115 billion, which, by the way, is still over around $440 billion less than Ethereum's all-time high market cap. And Ethereum, its potential for enterprise adoption, I don't think is as great as Hedera. Very high gas fees, arguably not even scalable. Hedera doesn't have that. Hedera doesn't even need to rely on these layer 2s, much like, for instance, in the case of Ethereum. Now, let's not forget, people oftentimes say that AI is going to be big narrative during this run, meme coins. And I agree, it's going to be a big narrative during this bull run, but take into consideration how projects that are focused on the enterprise market, much like Hedera, I would argue, it's going to be a big narrative as well. But it's just a matter of time, because people often, they move in trends. They care about this project, they move on to another, and they move on to another. HBAR has done pretty well as of right now, much like I predicted. It has had a slight pullback, but you know what? Who cares? Because when there's over 600 million crypto owners as we speak, according to Crypto.com research, I highly doubt that the bull run is going to be bad. The journey, I think, is still far from over. Bitcoin is still struggling to maintain $100,000. Imagine once it goes to 150,000, 200,000, and maybe even beyond. HBAR at the price of $3, I don't see why not, but it's just a waiting game, which is why I'm still dollar cost averaging, accumulating and holding, because I think better days are ahead, and I'm not going to overcomplicate things through day trading. I'm going to keep things simple, because I'm very bullish on Hedera. And man, it's definitely a must-have in my portfolio when it comes to HBAR. And make sure to subscribe if you gain value from this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's been you, the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.